Joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before thee, opening to the sun above. Melt the clouds of sin and sadness.
Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well today and having a good week. It is the 1st of October, the beginning of the fall season, and I pray you have a wonderful fall year, especially as we go into a very holiday season. We are continuing with our E100 Bible study series. We are in the New Testament, and we are doing lessons 58 through 60 if you are following in the book. Let's look at parables during this lesson for today. What is a parable? A parable is a comparison of two things, often done through a story that has two meanings. Parables appear in both the Old and New Testament, but are certainly more recognizable within the New Testament and Jesus' ministry. After many people rejected Jesus as the Messiah, he used parables and allegories to hopefully relate his message much more clearer to them. And depending on your count, there are 38 parables within the New Testament. Now, in Matthew chapter 13, Jesus wanted to talk to them about heaven. So he used several parables to describe what heaven was like. And I'll let you look those up in Matthew chapter 13, or you can read a small portion of them from the screen. Now, the idea of heaven, or what heaven is like, has evolved over many, many years. In early biblical texts, heaven was described in terms as an arching vault, more of a majestic place. Later, the concept of heaven became more transcendent. It is where God dwells. And nowhere in the Old Testament is heaven described as a reward for good people. Let's look at the Old Testament and New Testament views of heaven. The Hebrew word translated into English as heaven is samayim, and this is plural. The Greek is also sometimes, but not consistently, described as heaven being plural as well. Traditionally, heaven is a single place, and certainly in our Western culture, that is true. But the text makes it clear that we should instead speak of multiple heavens. Views of heaven. Ancient Hebrews believed that all souls would end up in Sheol, a place of darkness to which all the dead go, and this was both for the righteous and the unrighteous. Greeks had a belief very similar to the Hebrews, and the view of heaven has changed after the exile as Jews began to expect that God would reward those who were persecuted for their faith. So here are some questions you may ask yourself about heaven. What is your view of heaven? Will everyone go to heaven? Will you recognize people in heaven? And how would you describe heaven to someone who was unfaithful, or someone who was faithful and just didn't understand what heaven was about? How would you describe heaven? Let's look at the Good Samaritan parable. The parable of the Good Samaritan is found in Luke chapter 10, 25 through 37. Good Samaritan people, the Good Samaritan parable was prompted by a question from a lawyer. Teacher, what should I do to inherit eternal life? Samaritans were hated by Jews because they intermarried with non-Jews and did not strictly observe the Mosaic law. parable meaning. Jesus gave the word neighbor a new meaning. It was a much more broad understanding of who a neighbor was. It was anyone that was in need. The Samaritan had compassion on the injured Jew. It didn't matter that they did not get along or that the Jewish people didn't like the Samaritans. He only looked at him as a person who had a need and he wanted to help. Jesus is teaching a crucial lesson that went far beyond loving your neighbor and helping those in need. We struggle with an inability to feel compassion towards certain people, especially those people who are different than we are or who do not believe all as we do. We struggle with being friends with them or being neighbors with them and trying to have a relationship with them. So here are some questions that you might want to ask yourself. How do you define a neighbor? Is it a very small definition? Is it just someone who lives to the left and to the right of you, maybe in front of your house, and that's about as far as you'll go? What prevents you from expanding your definition of neighbor? Is it hard for you to help someone different from yourself? What does it take to have a compassionate heart? Now, in Luke chapter 15, there are 3 parables that deal with the lost. Jesus was concerned about those who were lost and those who did not believe in God and did not have any faith. So he used parables to try to relate how we are called to help those who are lost and help find their way back into a deeper understanding and a deeper relationship with God. To demonstrate God's extravagant love for each and every lost soul, that's what Jesus was trying to relate with the parable of the lost. The parable of the lost resemble very much Ezekiel 34, 11 through 16. I will search and find my sheep. I will be like a shepherd looking for his scattered flock. I will find my sheep and rescue them from all the places where they were scattered. I will search for my lost ones who are strayed away, and I will bring them safely home. Jesus is the Good Shepherd. Jesus came from heaven with one mission, and that was to seek and save the lost. Here are some questions for you to consider. Does it challenge you spiritually and personally to deal with those who are lost? Those who may be living lives that you do not agree with or have habits or addictions that you think are unhealthy and not right? How much does this challenge you to deal with those people? What are your words to people who are struggling personally and spiritually? What can you say to them to help them and to give them a new direction and a certainty and clarity in their life? Does it frustrate you that God asks us to love the lost? It is often much easier for us to be with people who think like we do and act like we do and look like we do. It is much easier for us to be with them. It is a real challenge. So how much does it frustrate you to deal with people that are not like-minded? I hope you enjoyed this Bible study for today. I pray that you have a good week, and I look forward to seeing you at St. Thomas very soon. We have numerous programs coming up this coming fall, and I pray that your time at St. Thomas will continue to be filled with the grace of God. God bless and have a good day.